Welcome to the Ground and Pwn podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We have some gaming planned for later in the show, but Scott, I have to say, this was probably the most difficult week of my entire MMA fandom. I don't think I've ever felt more disheartened by the events surrounding the sport than I did in like this last week and a half.
I don't know what you're talking about. This has been a great week.
Don't even start with me, because this, I don't know, like it started pretty much immediately after we recorded our last episode, where we had this video surface, and it was, well, let's be fair, it's not a video that surfaced. It was a video plus a sanctioned interview at the same time that surfaced through TMZ, because, you know, why wouldn't they be a part of the PR arm? And then just it was, so for people who
and
somehow
the nature
missed
of this
it,
video is,
the
of
nature
course,
of the video, yeah,
Dana White and his wife having an altercation, which involved both of them slapping each other. Dana slapping her twice, in what can only be described as a domestic violence incident. That's what it is.
Yeah, and the way it played out, because I see everybody saying, oh, she hit him first, which is the most bullshit argument ever.
It's technically speaking correct, but also much deeper than that. You don't have to hit someone back if they're not a threat or a danger to you. And White slapping Dana, yeah, maybe it hurt a little bit. He's not in trouble, and he knows that.
Correct.
He's a much larger man. He's a much stronger man. He doesn't need to do that. Now, look, you want to even put the alcohol in there, right? Like, alcohol makes you do dumb things, right? I'm not even, believe me, this is far from me excusing it. I'm just talking it out. Let me get there. It doesn't forgive, one, his reaction, and number two, you can tell that first time that Dana slaps her, yes, he was slapped first after he was grabbing her. You can see that on video. He's grabbing her. There is already physical contact before anyone slaps anybody. Unwanted physical contact, definitely negative physical contact. Slaps her one time. There's a beat. There's a little bit of a pause there. Then he slaps her again. This one, it almost felt like a punitive thing. Like the first one is reactionary, right? And when you're drunk, maybe you do a dumb thing and you just slap back because you're not thinking. I'm not forgiving it, but I could see the way that could play out. But then that second one, it really felt punitive. It felt like you slapped me, I got to do it again because you're not going to want to do this again. That's what it looked like to me, and that's scary.
Yeah, it's just and the response from the community, I think, because like in all honesty, the nature of this video is horrifying. It's awful. But Dana did own up to it in his comments to TMZ. He said, there's no...
Sure.
But the community, their response has been so frustrating because Dana comes on and says there's no excuse. And then the community comes on and
starts making
proceeds to try to make every excuse under the sun for him. I've seen like, oh, well, you women want equality. This is what that looks... No, it doesn't, you fucking asshole. That's not what equality looks like. And also, I've seen all kinds of just responses from some fighters as well. I believe Jamal Hill was one of the ones that was kind of like having Dana's
Jamal's
back
not
on this
saying
one.
some real good stuff, is he?
No, and like I was very much excited for his upcoming fight. Now it's like, dude, I just have no interest in watching you. And of course, this comes right on the precipice of the launch of a Power Slap League on TBS.
Oh my God, yeah.
It could, like, I believe it was the co-main event podcast. Ben Folks said, like, you're halfway to an Onion headline at that point. It's just like beyond parody that like the power slap guy would get caught slapping somebody.
And then what we get out of that is the simple fact that this show, which in theory should be so galling that the host of it, who is ostensibly going to be a large part of the show, you would think, because all these people on it are nobodies, and Dana likes to be at the center of any project he's in. So I imagine he's going to be heavily featured in this show. So you're gonna put that out there, and not only are you not going to cancel this show, TBS, who will be airing this Power Slap show. And I discourage anyone from watching it, by the way. This seems, it looked stupid before and I was kind of just ignoring it. But now I actively hope that people don't watch it and support it because it seems terrible. But the point I'm trying to make is that this show was supposed to premiere. It would have been this week. This week is when it would have come out. Mm-hmm. They have delayed it 1 week because the thinking you would have to read the tea leaves here. But they seem to be saying, let's give it 1 more week to let this blow over and then it'll be all right.
Which is what everybody who is associated with the UFC right now seems to be doing. Has WME issued like a statement?
No one is issuing any statements. Their official comment is no comment.
Their official comment, from what I understand, is read Dana White's interview on TMZ.
Yeah, that's more or less it too. It's kind of disgusting because at the very least, at the barest of minimums, these companies could echo what Dana is saying and say, we would not excuse this. We do not condone domestic violence. This is a private matter between him and his wife and his family, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They could even say that. I would look at that and be like, come on, guys. But they did something at least. At least they did something. They do nothing here. They look like they don't care, and it looks like an implicit condonement of this type of behavior. I mean, what does somebody have to do to get any sort of punitive measure? And I'm not sitting here saying Dana should be fired, right? You want to think that? That's fine. I have no problem with you thinking that. I wouldn't even have a problem if it really happened. But I'm not sitting here calling for his head from the company because I don't know what the punishment is. I don't really know what you're supposed to do here, what you really should do here. But I know it's not nothing. And what we have is nothing.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want some accountability, right?
Yes, accountability is the big thing.
Somebody just to say, we don't like this. But no, ESPN, WME, UFC, none of them who are in business with the UFC or own the UFC or are the UFC have issued any statement. ESPN comes out and says, look, we just show the stuff. We don't actually produce the content. However, their personalities, Brett Okamoto is on the broadcast. All these people are on the broadcast. That's producing content.
I would at least say this. I don't necessarily expect ESPN, the content partner, to do anything punitive, right? Like, what are they going to say? That's something I don't really expect anything out of them. I am disappointed in the way ESPN handled this in particular. And a lot of what I'm going to say is honestly echoing sentiments that have already been discussed before by like the area Hawani and people such as that, because it just is true. Like, they raise really good points here. Why are we putting Stephen A. Smith out there to be the one talking head that talks about this on like major network ESPN shows, right? Why is he the one who goes out there? If he identifies himself as a buddy and as a friend of Dana White, why is he the one who goes out there? How is that even remotely journalistically okay? I know we're stretching the definition of journalism to its outer limits and probably out of bounds when we call First Take and all these type of shows journalism.
Yeah.
But let's just include it anyway, because that's where we've more or less taken the world, right? Why are we putting him as the one? Why can't you get literally anybody else who's not as connected to him? And the reason is to protect him. And I don't like that. That's what really pisses me off, is the fact that you couldn't even try to get a sort of balanced take out there. If you want to have Stephen A. out there, fine. Have someone who will push back. Molly Karam did not push back. And I'm very disappointed in that. I think that's an absolutely fair reaction to have.
And then you have these Jeff Wagenheim tweets, Jeff Wagenheim of ESPN, saying, retweeting awful announcing on Twitter with Stephen A. Smith's softball take on Dana White, saying, we've been told not to write anything incendiary on social media about the Dana White situation, and I understand why and have abided by that. I just ask y'all to understand that some of us at ESPN do not have as soft a take as this on domestic violence. And then later on that day, Jeff Wagenheim once again tweets, clarification, there was no edict from ESPN bosses regarding the White situation, but in general, we are strongly discouraged from incendiary posts on social media and with a business partner, things are sensitive. My bad on the wording.
I will say, I can actually give you just a little bit of insight on this. I have heard this from ESPN employees before. So like, I actually believe his second tweet when he says that this is not related specifically to the Dana White thing. I am very sure that is the way ESPN employees are expected to live. I know a lot of ESPN employees, past and present, and this is absolutely not unheard of. So to hear this, yes, it's galling right now. I don't know Jeff particularly well, but I've met him before. I think he's a decent guy, and I'm not going to speak for him because that's not my place. But I would venture he probably is extremely mad that he wouldn't be able to go out there and say the same things that I'm saying right now. That's my guess.
Here's, having worked in corporate America in the past, here's how I think that this played out and how I'm interpreting Jeff's tweets here. Mm-hmm. I think that first tweet came because ESPN, on the reveal of this video, when this video came out, I think ESPN probably sent out an email saying, hey, just a reminder of our incendiary content policy on social media. Please, abide by this in the coming weeks or whatever. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm taking that as like a direct thing. And as he should have, because that was what the subtext was there.
Sure.
And then his bosses, upon seeing this tweet, probably reached out like, hey, we didn't make any particular statement about this. You're basically telling everybody that we did. You need to clarify that. And that's what that follow-up tweet seems to be.
Having said that, again, I would stress that this is absolutely policy. Like there's no change here. Everything would have been implied before. Like you're saying, it's more or less a reminder of it. And yes, there's subtext, but I don't think anything changed before or after, the new year in this case. I think it's really kind of sticking to typical ESPN policy. Again, I know people who've been there, are there, and this is consistent with what I have heard over the years.
Yeah, and it's just disheartening that the MMA media has done such a wide range of on the spectrum, such a wide range of good job. The Ariel Helwanis, the Luke Thomases, the Jed Meshews, they've, I would say, did a pretty good job covering this.
Luke was a freaking leader. Honestly, like Luke Thomas in particular, real freaking great job.
Yeah, they did a great job. And then you have Kevin Aioli on the other side.
Yeah.
With just the way it was put, it just basically like making every excuse in the book for him. I'm reading one quote here.
It was an apologist.
The question is the circumstances that led up to this. White is famous, and he works and plays at a breakneck pace, rarely leaving any downtime. With him, both at work and at play, it's go, go, go. And it's like, come on, dude. Like, I mean, there's so many other things, like talking about how, like, oh, he used a homophobic slur. Then he featured Liz Carmouche, who is a member of the gay community, in the first women's fight. So clearly he's an ally. It's like, no, like, he made money off that. So it's like the worst imaginable take. And honestly,
it's an embarrassing take.
It is embarrassing, and he and Yahoo should be embarrassed for publishing it.
Yeah, honestly, like, you've got to remember too, like, I'm not saying anything you don't know, Brian, because you understand this. You understand what I'm going to say. There are several people who something like this has to go through. It doesn't have to go all the way through corporate or through the absolute top editor necessarily, but this being a column at Yahoo, Kevin has an editor. So he's going to write this, and his editor is going to go through this, and they're going to read this, and ostensibly they would raise any questions as well. It's not just a copy editor. There is an actual, well, I don't know Yahoo's particular structure, but again, you know how these things work. There's going to be a few people who will probably at least have eyes on it at some point before this goes out. Maybe 1 to 2. And then it goes out. So it has to actually get approved by some other people. It's not just Kevin. And granted, it's an opinion piece. He's speaking for him via Yahoo's platform. But at the end of the day, this still represents Yahoo to at least a certain degree. But more importantly, this is, we know that Kevin has let's say a cozier relationship with Dana White than one, other journalists who cover the sport, other reporters who cover the sport, and number two, probably a lot cozier than it really ought to be between a reporter and whoever's in charge of it. There's a little too much buddy when they have interactions, and it's a little uncomfortable. But I think this has reached a breaking point with a lot of people. I don't know Kevin. I've worked around him many times over the last decade plus, but I don't know him. I've never spoken to him. But I can tell you this. I don't follow him on social media. I follow a lot of MMA reporters on social media. I specifically do not follow him because I'm not interested in the content he puts out there. And this is the reason why, because it's obviously coming from a different place, and it's just way too freaking softball. I don't approve of it. I don't want to stand with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Kevin and then TMZ as well with their interview with Dana White.
TMZ, they're terrible here.
They just.
But they're obviously they're an extension of UFC PR is what TMZ is at this point. Really, like they're also a very cozy relationship here, and obviously we saw. I mean, Harvey Lemmings gets up there and he's obviously he's reviewing him almost in a damage control sense. It really is like a damage control sense because they get ahead of the story and they change the narrative by the simple way they present it. The video doesn't go out on its own and allow people to react and say, "Oh, Dana White slapped his wife." The narrative immediately becomes and is picked up. People fall for the trap. It becomes Dana apologizes for slapping his wife. That's not the news. The news isn't that he apologized. The news is that he slapped her. He may have gotten the chance to apologize. The news is that he slapped her. He was in a domestic violence incident with his wife caught on camera. And when we've seen this play out before at places like ESPN involving athletes or people around the sport, it is covered very differently than it was with Dana White. And this is like the first time I've ever seen it covered that I can recall in such a way where everyone bent over backwards to kind of go the other way. I mean, for God's sake, Stephen A. Smith was like, it was almost like he was sad for the White family. He'll go out there and trash any human being for whatever reason involving the freaking ball, you know? I love stick and ball sports. That's what I really grew up on. I was not an MMA guy. I liked boxing as a kid, but there was no MMA when we were kids. Not really. It was UFC, but it wasn't the same thing, right? Yeah. It's a different world. I was a basketball guy, football guy, but like someone goes out there and let's say, you know, Aaron Rodgers, you know, makes a bad decision at on one of these plays and it doesn't go the other way. And he'll go out and savage the guy. It's like, he just made a wrong call on the football field. Let's put things in perspective here. This is where you start to say, man hit his wife. A large man hit his much smaller wife 2 times on camera. And we're just going to allow this to be, it is what it is. That's a real shame. All right, moving on. We'll never talk about it again. That was 3 minutes. Yeah, it's just disheartening. And I'll be honest, like when ESPN basically said they're not going to provide a comment and the UFC basically said they're not going to provide a comment aside from what Dana said, I texted you. I was like, I legitimately might cancel my ESPN Plus subscription because I don't want to be giving these companies my money. And that's fair too. It's just, I felt so disgusted. And it was, honestly, it was Kevin Ioli's take that I was reading that made me text you that. I was just like, That's funny that someone who had nothing to do with any of those entities actually is the one who got you over the hump. It was like, it was ultimately the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Where it was it's just like people are not going to hold him to account. And thankfully people are. Like MMA fighting. Oh, there are a lot of people who are. Yeah. That's one thing. If you don't mind, just me interjecting really quick. There are a lot of people who will sit there and say nobody is holding anyone to account. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing here. Obviously, people in power are not. People in power are not correct. But there's a select few entities who are not doing it, and I think by and large, the MMA media community has been very on top of not condoning this and not even moving on from it. I think a lot of us really are not moving on from it. I mean, for God's sake, I'll tell you, because you're not on social media, so you don't know, right? Or at least you're not on Twitter. So on Twitter, I posted several times about this, how I'm really not happy about this. Obviously, I've let my thoughts be heard more than just I'm not happy about it. But I've not let it go. I decide one time to do something general, right? Because just not because I'm trying to change or pace it. I saw something, I wanted to react to it. So I saw on the UFC news Twitter account. They have their logo now, or their profile picture is the 30th anniversary logo for the UFC. 2023 is the 30th anniversary. Real happy anniversary this year so far. I was curious what people thought of the logo, so I share it, and I'm like, well, what do you guys think? Just because I'm interested in logos. I've always been interested in logos, sports logos, and like my buddies and I used to draw them all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basketball logos and stuff. So I share this. I'm like, what do you guys think of this? And I got to say, like literally half of, probably more like 2/3 of the first reactions were people saying some version of "it slaps."
Oof.
Because no one wants to let that go. And that's the thing. And I think that speaks to a good part there, because I'm not even trying to make it about that. I'm trying to do something completely different. Not specifically, but I am. And no one wants to let it go. I think that's a good thing in the sense that we're angry and we're not going to take it.
You know what? It drives me crazy. Speaking of "it slaps" comments, Dana White, I'm sure it was a scheduled thing that he just forgot to cancel or something.
Or just
Dana White posted an F It Friday where he eats a bologna sandwich or some shit. And
oh no, it was a bologna pie.
Okay. I just looked at the comments, and yes, there were a lot of "it slaps." And also, this was not a scheduled thing. He posted on his Instagram story a few days afterwards, him just out gambling with one of the Nelk boys.
Oh, I know.
It was deleted fairly shortly after that. It didn't stay up for the full 24 hours, which probably says somebody reached out to him and said, hey, like,
maybe stay quiet.
This isn't a good look. Probably keep your head down.
Dana, shut the fuck up.
At least
for now.
Act like you're at home trying to repair things with your wife.
Yeah.
Don't be like, we're out on the town in Vegas with this YouTube guy who's, what is he? Is he even like in his 30s or is he 20 something?
I have no freaking clue.
I don't know who a Nelk boy is.
I try not to even know about those people because
they
don't have anything to do with anything.
Yeah, it's just frustrating that he's just like Batman villaining his way out of this, where he's just like, yeah, I'm out on the town partying. What are you going to do about it?
I mean, it's like borderline sociopathic, because he's sitting there in this video and let's just use his version of this. Okay. Let's not make any inferences, or at least I'm not going to. He says this is the first time anything like this has ever happened. First time he's ever put his hands on his wife, slapped his wife. Because as you know, there's no way to bounce back from that. You know, he said that 9 years ago. There's no way to bounce back from
the Ray Rice
putting your
incident,
hands on a woman. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Another guy who was caught on video slapping.
And I'm sure there were circumstances leading up to that as well, where, like, you know, he probably got angry about something. It wasn't out of nowhere, but
sure,
he had to be held to account to it, and rightfully so.
And we never saw him again.
The same should apply to Dana White.
Yeah, but anyway, the point being, if he is, I lost my train of thought here. If Dana is kind of going to be saying this is the first time, I'm here now. If this is the first time that this has ever happened, maybe you don't just go out gambling a couple days later. Maybe you actually do try to not even present something. Maybe you actually try. If you actually care, maybe you actually try to go into counseling or something like that. Relax, spend a little time with your kids who you're worried about. You know, I'm going with his version of what he said. They're all concerned about the kids, both him and his wife. Mm-hmm. They're concerned about the kids. They showed the kids the video. They talked about it. What are they going to do this for a day? And it's like, all right, moving on. This is like a family structure changing thing. If this is the first time this has happened.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that I want to just kind of a hope for the future. If Dana White is going to remain in a prominent public-facing position where he's going to be talking,
and it sure looks like he will. I never want to hear him refer to a member of the media just doing their job, telling the truth, doing real reporting as a scumbag ever again. Because anytime he calls a member of the media a scumbag, I want him to look in the mirror. I want him to watch that video and see what a real fucking scumbag looks like. And I want media members too. I'm going to challenge my fellow media members here. If you are in that room and it's the press conference format, you guys can ask questions. If you have the ability there to ask him if he calls you all scumbags, refers to media people as scumbags, if he does anything like that, you ask him, what is a scumbag? What makes a scumbag? Is someone who hits their wife a scumbag? Is that a scumbag move? What's worse? I would like to see that be a challenge because I think that's an absolutely fair question. If we're going to sit out there and have somebody just call all of you people doing your work scumbags when you're just doing a job and you're not, if this isn't, I'm just following orders, Nazi Germany. This is actual regular work to ask questions, to challenge the UFC, not in a way that's trying to bring them down. I don't want the UFC brought down. I don't even necessarily want Dana brought down. I mean, I don't like this. And if he went away again, I'm okay with it. But I'm not looking for Dana's head on a spike. I've never been. But you can't just sit there and take that. You can't just take, oh yeah, your guys are scumbags. That's not okay. Like, why would you take that? It's not okay.
Yeah. And there will be several who will just sit there, and I hope that there are several that will prove me wrong. And
I believe, you know what? I have faith that there are. I don't know who it is. I'm not going to challenge any particular members. That's not my place, but I'm sure there are people who will.
I also would not mind if it's suddenly like Hunter Campbell going out there and doing all the post-fight scrums from now on.
Mm-hmm.
I would be more than happy about that.
He'll never do that. I don't think he wants that.
Yeah, probably not. But just, a girl can dream.
That's true.
But, I mean, this is not the only
there's other
piece
stuff
of news.
going on. This has been like I wrote this in our little rundown here. This is MMA Hell Week.
And there's not even an MMA event. Well, I mean, there's been like little regional stuff, and I think
there was an LFA card and then some other stuff. Yeah, right. And then there was also the fights on C-SPAN the other day too. You were watching? There was some good fights on C-SPAN. Anyway, we'll leave that one out. But this is, I mean, inarguably, this is more awful. Phil Baroni arrested in Mexico for the alleged brutal murder of his girlfriend. I mean, there's no way to argue this as not as bad as what Dana did because a woman is now dead. By the way, both of these events happened in Mexico. I'm not saying there's any link, but oh my goodness, maybe the MMA community needs to stay out of Mexico because they're making bad decisions.
It's just been it was a rough New Year's weekend for the MMA contingency, we'll call it, I guess.
I mean, the details. I don't want to get deep into the details. You can find reports on them.
I read about it. Yeah,
Phil Baroni. I mean, it's brutal. Like what happened allegedly not allegedly, but whatever happened to his girlfriend, however it happened allegedly, is brutal. So if indeed he is found guilty of this murder, it sounds like one of the worst ways to possibly die. It just sounds horrifying. He is now apparently in a state prison. I'm heard it's not a very fun one to be in. I don't imagine Phil Baroni, if he is found guilty, is going to have much of a life to be happy about for the remainder of it. But it does also sound like you hear reports from a lot of people that he has been erratic and very different in recent years. This is not me trying to go down the road of excusing him, but it does raise a point about the old guard in mixed martial arts. We always heard, oh yeah, it's safer than boxing. You remember when that was the narrative, right? Dana would push that narrative. It's safer than boxing. These guys, they're not going to be, brains to mush one day. I think we're starting to really see the tip of the iceberg that is not true. And I'm very worried about some other individuals. And I don't want to name anybody necessarily. I don't think that's fair. But I'm worried what's going to happen to some of the stars of yesteryear and as we see them get older. I think it wouldn't shock me if we were starting to see maybe more signs like the NFL has unfortunately seen with its former stars, former players. I mean, Junior Seau is the one that I always think of.
Yeah.
His is an awful case, and we don't need to dive deep into that. You can look that up if you don't know. But Just what a terrible case. There's so many different people who obviously CTE is real. Like, it just is, right? It just is. We know by now to understand that repeated head trauma can damage your brain and it can change you. Would Phil Baroni have done this anyway? I don't know, but it does match the fact that we're hearing these reports of just more erratic, quick downturn in behaviors and things. And I just it sucks that hopefully no one else will die as a result of this, but we may see more and more athletes that we used to enjoy watching, 10, 15, 20 years ago, meet unfortunate rapid declines in their quality of life and the things that happen to them.
It's, I guess, referencing the Co-Main Event podcast again, they have said, we don't know what an old MMA fighter looks like yet.
Yeah.
And, we know what an old NFL player can look like. We know what an old boxer can look like. We know what an old pro wrestler can look like. But we haven't reached the point in this sport's lifespan where we know what an older MMA fighter. We know what, we have retired fighters, obviously. We have people who have clearly shown bad signs, but we don't know what an old MMA fighter looks like. And I really hope this is not kind of like a glimpse into that future, because I'm afraid very well might be. Yeah,
I'm afraid it is. I'm not saying everybody is going to go down that path. I mean, Randy Couture has been out of fighting for, I think it's been almost 12 years since Machida knocked his tooth out in that final fight. We see him at every PFL card, and by appearances, he seems okay. That's somebody who fought a long time in a pretty brutal sport too. So you got to hope that not everybody's going to go down that path, and not everybody goes down that path in boxing too. It's it doesn't work that way for everybody, but man, I'm worried. I'm very worried about what we're going to see in the coming years with a lot of the athletes that we enjoy. I am happy though that there is the trend that fighters will do less sparring outside of their fights. Guys like Max Holloway, they don't really spar anymore. I think that's really great, because I mean, why would you take so many shots when you're not even getting paid for them? I mean, it doesn't benefit you in any meaningful way. You're not taking more shots to the head, doesn't toughen your head. It works the opposite. It's not like the ability to absorb body shots, or at least the thinking behind that, right? It's different. Your brain, it will only degrade with more head trauma. So avoid it entirely. And I'm glad that, again, the trend is in the sport, less and less actual sparring. So I'm hopeful for that.
It's just awful that you hear about how, what you see on the screen, the fighters in the octagon, the NFL players on the field, you're like, oh my God, that was such a brutal hit. That's just, like you're saying, a very small part of the equation for so many of these athletes, whether it's the sparring, whether it's the full pad workouts in NFL where players are taking pretty hard hits, they're ramming their heads into things. It's just, it's the stuff that you see on the field, in the octagon, in the ring is only a tiny part of this. And, especially with the old school mentality of a lot of these fighters who have been in the game for so long, they are just doing hard rounds in the gym. And it's like, that's not good for your health at all. And
the old shoot to box, Vale Tudo type of mindset. It doesn't need to be in the gym. Bring it to the cage. Bring it to the night where you're getting paid. That's good. But, as much as it could sharpen your skills, it could also degrade your ability to use those skills for as long as you would like.
So, yeah, I mean, Phil Baroni, it's a terrible, terrible situation, and our thoughts obviously
it's worse. Yeah, we're with the young lady who was killed. That's where my thoughts are first and foremost, and then second off, it's with athletes in general who have taken up so much punishment, and the hope that they don't find themselves in situations like Phil Baroni is.
Yeah, and of course, it all circles back to topics of fighter pay, because
Sure.
these people are going out there, putting their lives on the line, and potentially getting paid as low as 10 and 10. 12
I mean,
and
that's
12.
just in the UFC. Obviously,
Yeah.
Outside of that, 10 and 10. If you've got to understand too, is 10 and 10 is actually really good if you just came off the regional scene. I don't think that's enough, but when you're coming off of there and you're actually getting 10 and 10, and you know you're going to get the money too, like, you know, if you're working for, depending on what promotion it is, a lot of them you can trust, but if they're, you know, one of these startup kind of things, you just don't know. It's a real boon, but then, yeah, you kind of want to go a little further and be able to support yourself a little better.
Yeah, it's just terrible. And then you see the Bryce Mitchell interview where he was like, yeah, I had like $2,000 in my bank account, I think he said. And that's why he took the fight with Ilia Topuria while he had the flu. And it's like, you know, whether that's true or not, like the fact that it's even questionable that a highly ranked fighter in the UFC would only have a couple $1,000s in his bank account.
I do wonder about him in particular, though, what kind of purchases he's making and that kind of thing, because he's got like this recording career he's trying to do. And I know he's got a lot of weapons, and I know he had the unfortunate situation where he injured his nether regions pretty.
Yes, with a drill.
Unfortunately, yes, with a drill. I imagine a lot of that came out of pocket too. So.
Which goes back to our health insurance that the fighters don't have.
You're not wrong. They need, I am 100% with you. They need health insurance. The fighters do not have health insurance. They are only covered for injuries that happen as a result of their fights, which is why you have, not that we need to go into every single thing that's wrong with fighting right now, but that's why you have fighters that will enter the cage injured.
Yep.
And then we get situations like TJ Dillashaw last year and the even more infamous Derek Minner, who led to whose fight last year led to essentially the downfall of James Krause and the ability for UFC fighters to bet on fighting.
Yeah, this has been such a bad week, and we have more bad stuff to talk about, and this one was completely unexpected. And
I mean, not that any of these were expected, but this was even there's no like nefariousness here. This is just sad.
Yeah.
The loss of Victoria Lee. From the famous Lee family, Angela Lee and Christian Lee from One. Mm-hmm. She herself is a young fighter, 18 years old, and December 26th, she passed away. We only learned about this over the weekend when Angela posted about it. But just awful. We don't know details, but it doesn't seem like there's any sort of foul play or any sort of thing like there. It's just we have lost a young promising girl, and that is a real shame.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Victoria Lee. I've obviously seen Angela and Christian Lee, and like the fact that they seem to have indicated, and this is the least important part of it, but they seem to indicate that, like, you know, she was kind of the future of the family in the fighting organization.
Nickname was the Prodigy.
Sports. Yeah, and it's a tragedy when anybody that young passes away, obviously, but like, you know, then you start to think about like, all right, well, the potential of the person and like the impact that this will have on the family, that, you know, the family's been in pretty prominent in the public eye, especially as far as One championship is concerned. And
I mean, they're a big part of One. Yeah.
And it's tragic. Do we know the circumstances of it?
No, that's what I'm saying. We don't know. But the fact that we only learned about her death because her sister posted about it more than a week. It was almost 2 weeks later. I would imagine if there was anything, let's say if it was like a violent end or something like that, I imagine something like that would actually have gotten reported. Mm-hmm. So my assumption is, I mean, look, I really don't know. All we know is that no matter how an 18-year-old girl dying, it is just sad. Like there's so much life to have not lived. It's awful. It really just depresses me, especially as a father. Like my kids are not that old yet. Like I've got a 7 and a 5, but I want them to live full lives, and I can only imagine what her parents are going through right now, and her siblings, of course. But just as a parent, I feel especially for the Lee's parents, and it really sucks. It just sucks. She was 3-0, by the way, if anybody is curious. This is, again, not the most important details, but let's at least celebrate what she was able to accomplish in her young life. She was 3-0 with 3 finishes in one. All 3 of them came 2 years ago when she was only 16, 17. She was very young. Like I said, prodigy here. Who knows what she would have been able to accomplish? We'll never know. And it's a shame she was robbed of that opportunity, because obviously this was something she at least enjoyed to some degree.
Yeah, it's just awful. And our thoughts go out to the Lee family. That's just terrible, terrible, terrible news. And we have one more thing. There's not equally terrible, because now again we're talking about loss of life. This is to a lesser degree, but this is more in the realm of awful because of, let's say, poor choices potentially. This is a report that I want to stress, is that Jose Aldo and his wife have been linked to I guess a scandal over COVID-19 funds that were supposed to go to people in need, and somehow the Aldos were able to access them, allegedly. So not great. This wasn't even the Jose Aldo scandal that I thought you were talking about.
Oh, no, this isn't even it. This is... Yeah, well, Jose's in something else, too, but we don't really know the details of that one.
So another report, just to touch on it real quick, is that, basically Brazil's version of January 6th, where, rioters... They got
January 8th now, yeah.
That basically went on over the weekend, and terrible, terrible scenes coming out of Brazil for that. But the report that I saw was that the former president, Bolsonaro,
who we know is staying with Jose Aldo right now in Florida.
Okay, well, that's what I was.
There are photos of them together. Like he is definitely there. I saw a video of him walking around in Publix.
God.
So he's like definitely Jair Bolsonaro is definitely in Florida, 100%. And it looks like he really is staying with Jose Aldo, because they're at least posing in pictures together. That much we know. What were you going to say now?
I was going to say, if this report's true, it's just, again, disheartening.
Well, the report being that, I guess, there are reports out there, and again, I want to stress these are reports, that Bolsonaro may have been involved in the planning of this, whatever you want to call it, insurrection, what have you, that happened in Brazil. And if he was doing so and coordinating it in any way in Florida, and he actually is staying at Jose Aldo's house, well, what the heck? How does Jose Aldo not know?
Yeah, well, I mean, the writing on the wall there is that he would know.
We're kind of taking leaps here. We don't know. I want to stress that, but good God, a lot of people's thinking, I would imagine, regarding Jose Aldo has been challenged and stretched thin about the ability to support Jose Aldo in basically just the last week.
It's just this entire week has been like exhausting to be an MMA fan. It has been awful. We do have one other news piece to talk about before we talk about this awful card.
A little, almost disheartening, but also hopeful in a sense too, I would actually say, because this isn't like a negative thing.
Yeah, so I don't know the details behind this, because I just saw this while I was kind of looking at the internet this morning. Khabib Nurmagomedov is reportedly stepping away from MMA in terms of coaching and promoting.
Yeah, he will apparently, per the reports, he won't be coaching anymore. I don't know what that means for this particular fight with Islam Makhachev going against Alexander Volkanovski next month. I don't know if that's going to interrupt that or not. I would imagine it would be tough to pull out now, but who knows? But also, yeah, he will still be, per the reports, in the ownership group of Eagle FC, the promotion that he had purchased, and they've started trying to break into America. But he will not be doing any of the promoting or kind of day-to-day stuff. He's kind of going to be more of like a silent partner. And I guess the goal is to focus on non-MMA business and family. That's what the reports are saying. It almost has the feel of a New Year's resolution. Like, I'm going to step away from fighting from now on. I'm done. I'm moving away.
It was awfully close to my New Year's resolution. I'm not even a fighter, though. But I mean, it seems like he is doing it for the right reasons. Like you said, I mean, Javier Mendez of AKA said that in an interview, quote, at Yahoo Sports, he just doesn't want to miss being a father. He talked to me about 3 weeks ago and told me his plan and said he planned to talk to this team and inform them of his decision. He's doing it for the right reasons. He's a family man, and he simply wants to spend more time with his family. So if that's the reasoning, then you can't fault him for this. But it does. We talked about robbed potential for another reason earlier. This feels like, oh man, he was just getting started. I mean, his career was cut short because of the unfortunate passing of his father. And now this feels like his coaching career is cut short after he had an unbelievable year as a coach last year.
First off, he's actually going to be the Mixed Martial Arts Journalists Association's Coach of the Year. We just completed voting for that over the weekend, so I'll break that here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, he had 2 new champions at 155 in 2 different promotions.
Yeah, his core group there. And, one could make the case that Javier Mendez absolutely deserves a ton of credit in there as well. But they are unique to their own. I mean, there's a lot of work that gets done overseas as well that does not necessarily involve Javier. So it's really hard to separate the two, but it's also hard to know where the line is either, because there is one. So, but nonetheless, we did vote for him. Having said that, I know it's kind of disappointing and you almost feel like, oh man, we want more. But man, from hearing Khabib talk about this sport, he never seemed to love it. Like it seems like he really never did love it. Like you didn't know any of this when he was still fighting, but once his father was gone, it was almost he wants his father back, right? Who wouldn't?
Of course.
But at the same time, there almost seems to be a sense of relief, not that he's gone, but that he can live the life he wants to live. He no longer has to walk father's plan, the famous father's plan, right? He can do whatever he wants now, and he has the financial means to do it. Mm-hmm. He walked away from fighting actively as a fighter on top. He's walking away as on top as a coach as well. I'm going to choose to celebrate that. I think that's wonderful. I think it's amazing. I think he's taking from the sport what he wants and moving on, and that is the exact opposite of what combat sports does. So I'm going to celebrate the heck out of that and just hope that there's not more negative things that we have to say about Khabib at some point, because everybody seems to be going down a path that we're going to talk negatively about them for one reason or another. Obviously there's different things that you could even already get on Khabib for, right?
Yeah.
But I will absolutely salute the heck out of him making the choice to take his ball and go home after he won the game.
Yeah. He could have stayed in this sport in perpetuity, but he seems like he accomplished all he wanted to accomplish. He doesn't really seem like he has any, I guess I was going to say external pressures to stay, but we all know Dana White loved taking him out to dinner every chance he got, trying to convince him to get back in the sport. So he definitely has external pressures to get back into the sport, but it doesn't seem like he has any close family members saying like, hey, I really want you to do this and like accomplish this. And without
I think he's very happy to. I think it's even better that the fact that his guys are now ruling the roost, because it's not even like he would feel like the itch to go and get back on top. He gets to live through these guys who he loves as brothers. I mean, Usman Nurmagomedov is obviously a relative, and Islam Makhachev is not a blood relative, but they look at each other like brothers. They have for a long time. They've known each other a very, very, very long time.
They grow up together, they train together.
I mean, shoot, it's easy to imagine why somebody would want to just have happiness for those people in their lives and just be like, you know what, I can be happy for them. And I think that speaks to the type of person he is, that he isn't necessarily a selfish guy. We all have our needs, but I think he seems to be one who can live for other people. And I think that's pretty an admirable trait as well.
For sure. I am going to miss having him be a part of a corner of Islam Makhachev. We don't know if he's going to be in that corner for the Alexander Volkanovski fight, but I mean, I would imagine he's not going to be. Maybe he'll do one more. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
that's the thing I wonder is he done now, or is he going to be done? I don't know.
I mean, that's basically what he seemed to do. So. Well, I mean, Javier Mendez seems to have
that's true.
Corroborated
he's more or less confirming it. Yeah.
But we saw that with the Justin Gaethje fight where, he was like, I said one more, I did that. Now I'm done. Maybe that's the case with this, where he's like, I'll be in Islam's corner one more time and then be done. Cause
maybe
Islam's already probably in the middle of his camp, or at least the starting parts of his camp for gearing up to that fight. So it would make sense that maybe Khabib would want to see that one through, but who knows?
And what if he's, I imagine he's not going to step away entirely from the sport in the sense that he will never go into a gym, right? Like, I would doubt that. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was at least coming in and occasionally helping out as like maybe even a training partner or something like that, right? Like someone who's still supporting him actively and not just, through words or encouragement or anything like that. But maybe it's just going to be, maybe he won't be cornering, maybe he won't be the guy who's in charge every day. Maybe he's just going to be a part of that group and just wants to be able to step away from that, I need to be here. I need to be here. Instead, he's like, I can come in, I can try to help. And maybe that's the kind of the right way that he can balance it out. Who knows? We don't know the nature of it. So, but whatever it is, I wish him luck.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish him many burger cheese with his family. The man
cheese.
loves a cheeseburger.
He loves a cheeseburger.
And I would have loved to have a cheeseburger with. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
I interviewed him a couple times, and I think I've shared on this show too, he trained occasionally at the gym that I was doing jiu-jitsu at right back when he was starting in the UFC. I had a real interesting look at a young Khabib coming in there and sharpening his tools and getting to the point where he is now. It's kind of a unique experience that I've had. I almost wish I took better advantage of the times that I could have been chatting with him and that kind of thing. But those are the roads not taken.
My only experience with Khabib was going to the UFC Hall of Fame induction ceremony last July. Everybody else got up and said these inspirational speeches. Khabib just got up and read basically like Ali had written him some notes of like, talk about this. And I think he was supposed to talk about like maybe 2 or 3 of them. He hit every single talking point and rambled for about 45 minutes. And it was charming and cute at first, but then eventually it was like, oh my God, dude, wrap it up like 20 minutes ago.
Hey, let the man have his time, right?
They needed some wrap it up music, but they weren't going to give it to Khabib. And also he was the headliner. So it wasn't like,
Yeah, you don't take that away. You don't take the mic away.
But
yeah.
We wish him well in his post-fight, post-coaching, post-promotional career and his life.
Especially if it's, as he says, it's about family. So, I think that's wonderful, having to put in all the time and now getting to be with the family every day as he's saying. I think that's swell. It's just
for sure.
Swell. But I think that's probably wraps up. It's nice to wrap up. Well, no, we have just a little bit of fighting, I guess, right? We do have to talk about this card that almost is meaningless this weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of names and a couple of fights on here that are interesting, but even
the
headliner.
It's Saturday, by the way. The UFC is returning finally after 4 weeks away of active fights. We've just had some terrible things going on, obviously. But yeah, we've got the fight night, UFC Vegas 67, Nasruddin Imavov against Kelvin Gastelum. Just real quick, what's first glance on this headliner? Is this interesting to you?
Do you want to just do the star system right off the bat?
Yeah, let's do star system. What do you got? 5 stars?
2.
Okay. Doesn't sound like you're going to be watching this one.
Well, wait till you hear my star system on the rest of the card.
Ooh, here we go. Okay, so all right. Why only a 2? I should say.
Gastelum, his career has been propped up for the longest time by his fight against Israel Adesanya. And yes, that's one of the all-time great fights. But what has he shown us since then?
It wasn't just that. It was the fact that in the lead up to that, he was the number 1 contender to the championship.
He was supposed to fight Robert Whittaker.
Yeah. Obviously that didn't. And by the way, I will maintain that, and I'm not superstitious and I don't really believe this, but I will maintain potentially maybe you don't walk around carrying the belt when you're not the champion, because ever since then, his career just tanked.
Yeah, so since then, he lost to Israel Adesanya, which, one of the greatest fights I've ever seen in my life. Then he lost to Darren Till, lost to Jack Hermanson. He beat Ian Heinisch, lost to Robert Whittaker, no shame in that, lost to Jared Cannonier. And, that Jack Hermanson fight, I mean, he got heel hooked in a minute 18.
No shame in that either, to be fair.
No
Jack
shame in
Hermanson's
that, but
got some good subs.
At the same time, it's just like, I don't know what he has really shown us in order to get us excited about seeing him fight lately. Then you have Nasruddin Imavov, who is kind of on the periphery of becoming a guy in the middleweight division.
He's on the come up.
he's right there. He's kind of knocking on the door of becoming in the conversation of this division. And yes, it's the classic UFC matching a guy who's free falling against a guy who's on the come up and hoping that the guy who still has a name but is free falling gives some shine to the guy who's on the come up. And it's like, yeah, okay, this would be a good fight to watch if it was like the third fight on a card. I don't see this as a good headliner.
It's not a good headliner. I think it's a fine fight, but like this is a fight that's like maybe you make this the prelim leading into the pay-per-view, like the featured prelim.
Yeah.
That would be fine. To kind of have this be the first hook to get you back into watching fights after a month, it almost feels like, yeah, we know you're desperate for our fights, so we'll give you anything and you'll be probably pretty happy. And to some degree, I'm sure that's true, but also it's, come on, try a little harder. My thinking is,
especially when we've been off for 4 weeks, it's like you couldn't have, like, it's not like you're like depleted of fighters. So,
and it was also coming out of a card that really wasn't the most anticipated card either at the end of the end of the year. I feel like the UFC, I don't think ESPN cares. I think this is why they tap it, is because ESPN they don't mind it. But if it was me and I was in charge, and maybe there's reasons they don't do this, right? But if it was me, the way I would want to do this is you close the year with your pay-per-view. You do the card, maybe you move that like December 17th card, maybe you move that one back a couple weeks, and then you move up the way they did it. So they have the Wonder Boy versus Holland card leads into the final pay-per-view of the year, and that's how you close your event all year. Now, granted, it wouldn't have worked out particularly well because the poor taste that was left by the decisions at the end of UFC 282, that still would have backfired. It would have had that narrative carried in. But most of the time, you're not expecting that to happen, right? You're expecting it to be fireworks and hopefully lead into something good. Then when you come back, you either have a really good card, kind of like that Wonder Boy Holland level, or you go straight into a pay-per-view. Like, people are hungry. They might want to just pay for it. Like, why would you not start with a bang and begin with a bang when you're taking time off between? I don't understand that.
Yeah, this is not the card that like gets me excited for the UFC in 2023. And I'm already, because of the events of the first couple of weeks of this year, not excited about the UFC in 2023.
No, and I get that, especially you're coming at more from a fan perspective. I will say I'm going to give this one a 2.5 star main event here, because I do think it could be a fun fight. At least there's that. There's not as much stakes as you would like there to be, I guess, but I think it could be fun. I also don't think this is one that I'm looking at like banger. I just don't not a lot of middleweight fights produce bangers. So I would say 2.5 feels like where I'm at here. What about the rest of the card for you? Because it's not a super deep card, but just first glance, what is your score for as far as your interest level? 5 stars.
This might be the lowest I've ever scored a fight
really?
Night card. I'm going to say 1.5.
Okay.
There's
wow.
Again, a few names on here, a couple of fights that have some interesting potential, no real stakes in most of these fights, and even the name value is fairly low. I mean, I'm interested in seeing Jimmy Flick's return. Danny Ige versus Damon Jackson has some good potential.
I think that'll be a fun fight, actually. I think that's one that, like, if you had to pick one fight to tune in for, that would be the one I would zero in for you.
Yeah, for sure. But like the rest of this, I don't know. It's a bunch of fights that amount to a 1.5 rating for me.
I will say this. I don't look at this fight as one that I think is going to be super intriguing to watch, but there are high stakes to it, and that's Ketlin Vieira against Raquel Pennington, because legitimately the winner of this fight could challenge for the championship at 135 pounds.
That's because there's nobody who fights at women's bantamweight anymore. Like,
I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it really
division.
Is stakes, dude.
I think I heard that there hasn't been a women's bantamweight fight in the UFC since October.
Women's bantamweight? Oh, any women's bantamweight fight
in the UFC since October?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that
because it's an inactive division.
It's more or less a division that exists for Ronda because, and granted, it existed before. You know, there were the likes of Marlos Kunin, and Misha Tate obviously was in that division as well. But realistically, I think if Misha Tate was able to have fought in her ideal division all along, she probably would have been fighting 125 pounds this whole time. And I think there's a lot of women who would have been that as well. That's why when there was no 125-pound division, I remember sitting next to it was a woman who was working with Sirius XM and in their podcast at the time, their MMA, or not the podcast, their shows on Sirius XM in the combat sports realm. And I was telling her about, flyweight. I think this is going to be like the division. And I was talking about it. She's like, oh, I don't watch, like, she's not like watching Invicta. She was more like focused on UFC. And I was like, no, when they get 125 in there, I think that's going to be like, eventually it will take time, but that's like that would be like a marquee division. And I don't think it's quite hit that yet, but I do think they have the best fighter there. And I think ultimately that's the place where it will be like 125, 115, and I hope 105 as well. I would like 105 to get up there too. I think you're more likely to see better fighters, more interesting fighters at those three weight classes than in like, let's say the next 10 years or so. It's going to be more like those three than anything at 145 or 135.
Yeah,
or 55 PFL.
I mean, 115 is already the marquee division in the women's side at this
Probably,
point.
I mean,
it used to be 135. Sure. 135 was great back in like the day of, Ronda, Misha.
Well, yeah, because she was Ronda. I mean, she added a lot of cachet to that division.
But it was so exciting when it was like kind of like the belt just bouncing around, like after Ronda lost to Holly, and then Misha took it off Holly, and then Amanda came in storming, and she
brought
was
balance to the force.
Yeah, really. But like, you're right. 115 is the current marquee division, but 125 has a lot of potential. Like, we just saw Taila Santos give Valentina Shevchenko a run for her money. We have, big names like, or promising names like Aaron Blanchfield on the come up.
Absolutely.
We have
Manon Fiorot.
I'm
probably saying that name wrong, but that's my
Alexa Grasso has looked great
Grasso.
at 125.
There's some real interesting talent there. Absolutely. I would love to see
the return of Tatiana Suarez.
Yes, in another one who, again, my bold prediction from last week, that she could potentially get to there. I think she now has a matchup, by the way. That's another like little bit of news. She is going to be facing Montana De La Rosa in February. That's on a fight night card too. It's not a headliner or anything, but I mean, when that rolls around, there is a lot of intrigue for that fight for me. So, because I really want to see what she's got. So I don't know what we're going to give that star rating at that point. I will say this star rating, I'm going to give it more like I'm going to say a 2.5 again as well. I'm not,
okay.
I don't love anything here, but I also don't think it's that bad. We've got way worse cards in terms of it's just a bunch of like, Dana White Contender Series, they just got off the show kind of thing. There's a lot more experienced talent here and talent that can go places. Umar Nurmagomedov is 15-0 going against Raoni Barcelos. That's another really good fight. Honestly, there's fights here. Punahele Soriano is a lot of fun whenever he goes out there. That's one middleweight who usually produces pretty fun fights. So I think there's room for fun fights here. It's definitely not the most attractive card. I would grant that 100%.
That Umar Nurmagomedov versus Raoni Barcelos, that is a good fight. Maybe I'm just soured on the UFC right now because of all the stuff we talked about. And also, I do want them to come back and just start the year off with a bang, and this is not that card.
I think they're not starting with a bang on paper, but I think it could be one of those ones where, and we say this all the time, right? It's like, oh, everyone complained about it, and then look, it was awesome. I actually do think this is one of those ones that's setting up that way. So we'll see. But there's a few fights again. I don't think Ketlin Vieira versus Raquel Pennington is going to be a good fight. I think it's just an important fight. So yeah, I'll go 2.5 there. But honestly, I think we're probably done talking about the fights now, right?
Yes, please.
Because we got to go over we got some gaming to get into stuff. Man, I can't wait to talk about one thing in particular. But before we get there, we'll talk about some other things.
Yes. So a lot of it's PlayStation related, which I know is up your alley.
I do like
one
PlayStation.
Of them, so I saw that PlayStation put out some information. This isn't on our rundown or anything, but the PS5 has sold 30 million units, according to PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan.
Good for them.
And he also...
It's always my reaction when I hear numbers. It's like, oh, well, that's nice for them.
This is the big thing. he indicates that the shortage might be over. So if you've been trying to get a PlayStation 5, that might be some promising information for you. I know that I've seen it more readily available online. I'm not on Twitter, so I can't follow people like Wario64 who tweet out
he's got like a Discord or something too, so you can follow.
Okay. Well, at any rate, that's like one account that I do miss following because there's so many great deals. But hopefully that means that if you've been trying to get a PlayStation 5, if you still haven't been able to get one, then I feel bad for you because it must be exhausting just monitoring all the links and everything as they pop up.
If you're not already discouraged and moved on from actually trying to do that, yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully that means you'll be able to get one soon. The Last of Us multiplayer game that was originally supposed to be a part of The Last of Us Part 2, it got spun out last year as like kind of its own thing, and now we got some new concept art for it, and it says that there's going to be some news coming later this year. So here's a quote from Neil Druckmann. He said, "We'll have some fun surprises for you along the way, but later this year we'll begin to offer you some details on our ambitious Last of Us multiplayer game with a team led by The project is shaping up to be there's 3 names that he listed off, so we don't need to do that. To be a fresh new experience from our studio, but one rooted in Naughty Dog's passion for delivering incredible stories, characters, and gameplay." So we're going to get some news on that later this year. And here's one that isn't PlayStation exclusive related, but one that I know that you hold this game very near and dear to your heart. That is Hitman 3.
Yes, love the Hitman series.
So they're changing Hitman 3. It's no longer going to be called Hitman 3. Now it's going to be called Hitman World of Assassination, which is what they've called this trilogy, the World of Assassination
trilogy. It's always
trilogy.
been known as that. Yeah, correct.
But now it's called World of Assassination, which means that now anybody who owns Hitman 3 will get the free upgrade to the Hitman World of Assassination on all platforms. It includes access to Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 through the existing access passes, which that basically makes it so you can play the levels of Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 in Hitman 3. It was something already available.
Which you always could if you did own those games.
But if you owned those games or you bought like the access pass.
Right.
Now it's just like, all right, you own Hitman 3. Now you own Hitman 1 and 2 in Hitman 3, which is great.
That is quite a boon. Yeah, that's super great because there's oh my God, if you only owned 3, I should say, or if you didn't even own any of them before, and maybe you didn't love the idea of having to buy all these passes and all that stuff, man, there's some amazing, like absolute, like greatest of all time type of Hitman levels that were in games 1 and especially 1 and as well as 2. Anyone who didn't play, if you're familiar with Hitman at all, there's a level in Italy in the first one called Sapienza, or
very good level.
That I think is one of the best levels they've ever made. It ranks up there pretty high.
It's beautiful too.
So yeah, it's gorgeous. They do a really good job. So yeah, I'm super glad. I hope everybody gets to check that out. If you have any ideas about like playing a game like this, it's for those who aren't familiar, Hitman, it's more or less kind of it's almost like a puzzle in a sense. It's not like solving a puzzle, but you're really just trying to figure out your own path in the sandbox to get the job done. It's like, here, you have to do this. Good luck. Go have fun.
Yeah. Here's a target, and there's often multiple ways to complete it. There's one way that's like designed as like, okay, yeah, this is kind of like the way to do it, but like you could accomplish it in any way. You can poison the guy's food or drink. You can make it so the chandelier falls on him when he walks underneath and it looks like an accident. You can do any number of things.
And if you're overwhelmed by it too, they give you certain paths that you can kind of opt into, and it can kind of guide you from A to B to C to D until you get to a point where you could either do the kill or maybe get to, close to being able to do the kill. So you can kind of opt into certain handhold, or it's probably not even really handhold. It's more like directing you to get to these places. And that's nice for people who want to maybe something that's a little more structured in the sense that they can try to pursue their goals. But then also, again, you can do it any which way. You can do it stealthy without killing anybody. You can do it running around and killing everybody. That's not the way I like to play, but you can do it. It's doable.
Here is the thing that I think is the biggest boon to this. And because I remember when Hitman 3 came out, I was like, all right, I own Hitman 2. I have Hitman 1 on this. Why won't it let me access this stuff? And it's like, oh, no, you don't own this particular version of Hitman 1, which will transfer to Hitman. And it was like,
I didn't realize it was like that.
But now they're simplifying it. So the quote is, here's how it works now. If you own Hitman 3 already, you automatically get access to 2 and 1, right? So if you don't own it, though, there are only 2 things there's Hitman World of Assassination, which costs $70 and includes Hitman 3, Hitman 1 Game of the Year Access Pass, and Hitman 2 Standard Access Pass. Okay, so that's one thing for $70. You get all three of those things. And then there's one DLC thing called the Hitman World of Assassination Deluxe Pack, which is $30, and that gives you access to Hitman 3 Deluxe Pack, Hitman 3 Seven Deadly Sins Collection. So that's the Hitman 3 DLC that came out.
I have considered buying that at times, too. I haven't bought it yet, so I will keep
And then the Hitman 2 Expansion Pass as well. So it gives you the DLC for Hitman 2, Hitman 3 for that $30. And then this is the quote from IO. It says, "Those are the only two products that new players need to consider when buying any Hitman game digitally as of January 26th, 2023. So this isn't live yet.
Right.
The changes have also been made with the freelancer game mode in mind, where being able to easily access all locations from across the world of Assassination is paramount to maximizing your enjoyment." So this was done seemingly in the name of simplifying your purchase decision. And that I think that's a win across the board.
And it's really like an unnecessary move. They didn't have to do this. So you always like when stuff like that happens, where they can do something without, I mean, ostensibly they have an end goal, which is to hopefully get more people to buy it, right? But also, realistically, it's not like someone was sitting there calling for it anymore. This game's been out for a few years. And I mean, Hitman, the original Hitman, not the original Hitman, but the original game in this trilogy came out, what was it, 2016?
Something like that. And it was piecemeal.
It's almost 7 years ago. It was I want to say it was March 2016. It was almost 7 years ago. So now, granted, they have also updated the visuals for these levels. So when you play it on your PlayStation 5 potentially, or your Xbox, so Xbox One X, right? I always mess it up. But if you play it on those, it will give you some visual upgrades there. So
that's
it's really
Series
great.
X.
Series. God damn it! Come up with a better name. Come on.
The naming convention is very confusing.
It's
to
just
be fair.
so terrible. But I will say this is a good transition into what I want to say of what I've been playing, because we haven't talked about what we've been playing of late. I have finally played PC GamePass. I picked up PC GamePass. I think I might have mentioned it here and there in the last couple of weeks, but I haven't really talked that much about it. And I've been playing the Halo Master Chief Collection. Finally. Playing the single player mode of this game. It's been up. I mean, Combat Evolved came out 2001.
Yeah,
I had never played through the campaign. It's 22 years later. I finally finished it. I played through. I also finished Halo 2 the other day as well. So now I'm kind of working my way through Halo. By the way,
hold on. We should give our listeners a spoiler warning right now.
Oh, right now, sure.
Starting right now, we are going to be spoiling or talking spoilers for story elements for Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, some Halo 3.
Probably not much Halo 3.
And then also God of War Ragnarok. So
yes, we will get to that in a moment.
That is how we're ending this show. We're giving spoilers for these games. So if you don't want to get spoiled or hear discussions about story elements of those games, this is your warning right now.
Particularly the two Halo games that are 20 years old. If you don't want to know about that by now and you've managed to avoid it, we don't want to be responsible. So, Godspeed to you.
God of War Ragnarok came out 3 months ago or 2 months ago. Yeah. So that's a little bit more touchy. So we're going to give you plenty of warning for that, because that's coming after our Halo discussion.
Of course.
But let's get back to Halo. You finished Halo Combat Evolved, which you played the Anniversary Edition, I imagine, because it's part of the Master Chief Collection.
Yeah, that's what's included in the Master Chief Collection.
I assume you played with the updated visuals.
I must have.
Because there's if you press I believe it's the select button on your controller, it can switch between the original graphics and the updated graphics.
Well, then I don't really know.
Did the walls have textures?
I think so.
Then yes, you played with the updated graphics.
I didn't notice that they had no textures.
It is stark contrast.
Okay, then I would probably have noticed that. I will say it definitely looked like, playing from Halo 1 to Halo 2. Halo 1 definitely had more of a, this is probably extreme, but like almost a cartoony feel. And I think Halo 2 started getting a little more, I don't know, not real, but
I just put you a link showing you the difference between the graphics.
I'm looking at it right now. Let's see. Pulling it up. And most definitely played with the better graphics. 100%.
Yeah, it was definitely a big upgrade when they put
out. Yeah, distinctly better.
Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. And then they did the same thing for Halo 2, by the way.
Okay.
So you probably played with the updated graphics of Halo 2. But yeah, talk to me about your thoughts of playing these first two games. You're in the middle of Halo 3 right now.
I just started Halo 3. I played a couple of I think there's 9 missions in that one, because I was looking ahead of like how many missions are in each game. And there's 9 in Halo 3. I've completed 2 of them, so I'm getting near the end. And I'm not going to play beyond 3. I think there's other PC GamePass games I want to play, so I said I'm going to just stop there. So as far as my thoughts on Halo 1 and 2, and I will kind of group this together, and you can ask more pointed questions from there, but I'm not super impressed with Halo. And it actually is not just the gameplay or that kind of thing, because you have to understand, and I will fully acknowledge, and you understand, obviously, 20 years have passed. Games have evolved. Combat has evolved, right?
Yes.
It's not going to be the same as it used to be. And I will grant that. The shooting is tight, 100%. I mean, we've talked about this before. Bungie knows how to make a shooter and to make it feel right. So they absolutely have all that. But I don't know. There were things that bothered me. And there was a lot of times where I didn't know where I was supposed to go. And there weren't a whole lot of indicate. I don't know if there was like a thing I could have turned on that would have said like, hey, go this way. But there were a lot of times where I'm kind of sitting there and I'm backtracking. I'm like, I don't know where to go. And it was starting to get like, not frustrated, but I was almost getting bored of that. A lot of the worlds that are more open, when you're not in those enclosed spaces inside, a lot of the open worlds felt kind of empty-ish, because that's just the way things were back then. And I understand that. I will grant what the game used to be, but playing it now through this lens and only this lens, yeah, it wasn't the most engaging experience that I'd ever had. I don't particularly love playing against or shooting against the Flood, especially the little Flood guys. Oh, they're just so annoying. It's not like fun to shoot them. It's not stressful. It's just annoying.
Yeah, I will say that's when the story really started cooking with gas for me, was when the Flood first arrived in Halo 1. And it's like, at first it was like, all right, well, humans against these cute little aliens that run around and like have a high-pitched voice, and they, they sometimes will stick themselves with a plasma grenade, and then like every once in a while a badass elite will show up. Mm-hmm. Then it's like, oh, this guy's head has been burrowed out. What the hell's going on here? And it's like, oh, now there's this like fungus looking thing running around, and like it's a pain in the ass to fight. And clearly it's a problem, because even the Covenant are fighting him now too. And it's like this like triangle of combat going on, where it's like you're fighting the Covenant, you're also fighting the Flood, the Covenant's fighting you, they're also fighting the Flood, the Flood's fighting everybody. And it's just like chaos in any given firefight. And I really love that. I did
like that part of it. I liked that it wasn't just everybody against you. It really became like a problem for everybody. I liked that element of it. I will say that. But just it really had a lot to do with just those little buggers, man. I don't know what they're called, but I didn't enjoy those at all. It was just annoying.
No, I get that. And then the going through the library, I believe it's called, in Halo 1. Where you're
working your way back up.
When you're going through kind of like just like the corridors after corridors after corridors with the guilty spark.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I know what you mean.
Where he's just going through and opening the doors, and you're going through and there's Flood jumping out all over the place, but it's like the same reused assets over and over and over again. It just seems like it goes on forever.
Like, all right, when are we done with this?
That's one of the worst levels in a shooter, like a good shooter, that I've ever played.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And I think probably things felt really draggy around that point too. But there was also, I think might have been the first time you even encountered the Flood, and you have to kind of work your way back up the building to get out of there from it. It just, again, part of it was I didn't know where to go, because it wasn't really indicated. So much stuff looks samey.
Yeah.
There's not indicators like. At this point, I would have been okay with just some sort of waypoint that's like, go here. Like, I really just want to end it. Like, that's fine. I also found that because I was playing and some of these levels were taking forever. And I'm like, why is this taking so long? It's like, oh, because you're engaging every single enemy. You can just run past a lot of stuff in that game. I did not know that. And eventually I figured it out. And I'm like, well, this isn't so bad now, because I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something you need to learn, especially when the Flood are involved. Like, just run through them in a lot of cases, unless, like, you have to fight. Like, just do the bare minimum to, like, clear a path and then just keep going, because...
Yeah, Which honestly, I don't even think that's like a negative. It actually makes sense that would be the case. Like, why does Master Chief have to kill every single thing? He needs to do what he needs to do to complete the objective. I get that. I guess it would have almost been better if the game had found a way. And again, I'm not faulting a game that's 20 years old. But it would have been better if the game had found some sort of way to like even passively be like, hey, we don't need to stick around. Let's get going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Cortana's there. Like she can give me a little guidance.
Yeah. I like Halo 1, but yes, it has aged not great, especially from like a level design and gameplay perspective. Halo 2 is a little bit better in that regard. They introduced a lot of things. Like you have to remember, like, again, you've talked about how these games are 20 years old, so it makes sense that they would feel a little antiquated.
Yeah.
However, in their time, these were revolutionizing the first-person shooter genre. And, you know, it's the same thing. If you play a game, any game really from 20 years ago, you're going to be like, oh, wow, we've come a long way. And that's how I feel ultimately about the Halo franchise.
No, I think that's
the early Halo franchise.
Yeah. Obviously, when you talk about like Infinite, which I don't know if I'll play or not at some point, but
here's what
you would expect more out of that. But yeah,
I would love for you to play after you finish 3, play through 4, and then play Infinite. Don't play 5. Like 5 basically got retconned anyway.
Okay.
So if you're wanting just to do the single player stuff, the single player of Infinite is actually really good. I like the single player of 4 more than most people, I think.
But you're saying I should play 4?
I would say 4 is pretty good. That was when 343 first took. Actually, Reach is considered by many the best one.
I don't think I'm gonna do that.
But if you just want to play,
to be realistic here, like I have a month free with PC GamePass. It is getting close to running out. Okay. I'm absolutely fine with extending it. Like I'm not going to extend it in perpetuity, but I'm okay with giving it maybe even one more month. But there's other games that I do want to try on there before I'm done. I would like to play Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah.
Your recommendation, you said 5 would be the better one probably for my interests than 4.
I think so.
So I will try that. Because I like the idea of the Mexico setting more than the UK. The UK is, I mean, whenever I play a game in there, sorry if you live in the UK, I'm sure it's a lovely country, but it looks dreary in video games. So maybe I'll go to Mexico where it looks a little more sunny and fun and that kind of thing.
Just make sure Dana White stays away.
Oh my God. Well, again, all the MMA community needs to stay out of Mexico, apparently, except for natives. Any native Mexican, I'm sure. Again, no insult to the country. I'm sure it's wonderful. Not trying to go there. Please don't hate me if you're from Mexico. I don't mean that. But yeah, I'm much more interested in that setting. That one I want to play Sunset Overdrive. And then if I have the time, I want to check out, because they have them too, some of the old Age of Empires games. I saw them on the list. I was like, I want to check that out.
I mean, Age of Empires 4 is on that. So like I've
only played 1 and 2 in my life, like way back. So
yeah, go for it. And they also, I think did they just put it out not too long ago? Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition.
I think it's if I was
about to come out.
I think it's either coming or it did come like just recently. So yeah. Like I said, I'll probably give it at least 1 more month, maybe even 2. I am not keeping PC Game Pass forever. I'm going to get what I want from it, then I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to focus on my PlayStation games again.
Okay, fair enough. Speaking of PlayStation games, Scott, I've been playing some Sports Story, but that's a Switch game. And I'm
not interested. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I figured you would not be. And I'm also God of War Ragnarok is the one that I spent my weekend pushing through the credits roll, and then I did the kind of the epilogue mission, and we're going to get into spoilers. So again, if you have been sticking
we're still
around
in spoiler territory here,
you don't want to get spoiled for God of War Ragnarok, this is your time to leave. But
bye-bye.
I very much enjoyed this. It reinforced the fact that this was my game of the year, my personal game of the year.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And I think it's better than the first one, to be honest. Like I think that
really
the story does overstay its welcome just a little bit. Like it does feel like they didn't want to do a God of War 3 in this trilogy. So they're like, hey, let's just make it a 2-part game and jam all the stuff we wanted to do in the third game into the second game.
I didn't even get that feeling, to be perfectly honest.
Like, I don't know. Like, it felt like it was... They could have
I do think 1 is better, though. I actually will say 1 is better. I'm the opposite, but I also don't see your negative as well. That's kind of funny, right?
It's just I kind of felt like the ending of the game where it's like, all right, let's recruit the armies to rise up against Asgard. That could have been much more played out if they did it in a separate game. Like that could have been like a kind of a Mass Effect 2 style or Mass Effect 3 style. Let's go around and unite the universe or unite the galaxy against the Reapers. They could have done that for God of War. I don't know. It felt like while the story of the game itself, I think, went on for a really long time, and I was starting to get to the point where I was like, yeah, I just want to see this through to the end. I just want to I want to get to the end point. I think that there could have been a spot that they found in the middle of this story somewhere where they could have been like, all right, it's time to move, delay and put the story to an end, a natural resting point until we have this climactic third act of this trilogy.
I disagree. I actually thought it was pretty okay. And I don't know that stretching out kind of the element you're talking about into its own third game, I don't know if that would have been necessary either. I mean, if we do that, we've got to add even more elements. What are we adding that we didn't already have? Yeah. I think we have everything, so I'm okay with it. It is double the length of the last game too, so that's part of it. You kind of played one, and it's been you haven't played it as recently as I have. I played God of War 2018 twice last year. But yeah, this one, it's double the length story wise, so I can understand. But you also, don't forget, you did do a lot more, especially early on, of the side quests.
I did.
And I think that probably worked against it in that way, in that it did take a little longer for you to get to the end.
Yeah. I mean, my final play time when I got to the end, I saved and looked at it, and it was like just a hair under 30 hours.
Yes, you added a good 5-ish hours to the time it took me to do it. I think therein probably lies at least some of the kind of like, all right, I want to get to credit roll. I'm not trying to say I told you so, but I do think having that stuff at the end of the game, it's like it almost makes that third game like you're talking about.
Yeah, that's fair.
And because there's so much more to do, and I don't know if you're going to do it anytime soon, but yeah.
But anyway, idea.
What did you think? I have to ask this in particular because I've had nobody to talk about this game with. What did you think of the big twist? The twist being when you go find Tyr in the beginning of the game, it was never Tyr. It was always Odin in disguise.
That caught me off guard. That was a genuinely surprising twist. And I didn't even catch up on it when Tyr turned and stabbed Brock. I just thought it was Odin in that moment. I didn't realize it was Odin all along until Atreus comes in and says, "The whole time
it was Agatha all along."
I was like, "Oh my god!" I didn't even put that together. I just thought okay, well, Odin came in, swapped himself out with the real Tyr, and hid Tyr somewhere. And it's like, oh no, that was Here's what I liked so much about it was you see these prophecy carvings on the on these little cabinets that you open up, and you see what looks to be Kratos, and you're told the whole time, oh, this is Kratos dying in Atreus's arms.
Sure.
When actually it was Odin who was portrayed dying in Atreus's arms, because you notice that when Atreus pulls Odin's soul into the marble, Odin falls in the exact way that Kratos was shown, or allegedly Kratos was shown dying in Atreus's arms, where he's kind of on his back in Atreus's lap. And it's no, this was actually Odin who was meant to die. And it's another bald guy with a beard.
There's a lot of what's great about this too is you don't see it coming. It's a genuine surprise, but it's also not out of left field because there are so many hints along the way, in the way that Tyr reacts to things and the way he behaves. I think you were even talking before at one point we were talking about this game of man, when is Tyr going to start getting involved in the battle? It's well, he ain't, because it ain't Tyr. He don't want to do it.
I would have been so. Oh, by the way, I mentioned that something got spoiled for me in a.
Yes. Yeah. What was it?
It wasn't anything. It was so I searched Kratos looks for something, and one of the Google autocompletes was Kratos lifts Mjolnir. And I thought that was it. Oh, that's wonderful. That's it. I thought that was going to happen in like the final battle. Like he was going to like need to, and it was going to be like kind of like Captain America in Avengers Endgame, where it's
no, they didn't want to copy that.
Yeah, but like,
I understand.
Also, it would have been such a badass moment to be like, all right, well, Kratos is like about to be killed by Odin and he's sacrificing himself for his son or something like that, or like choosing not to kill Thor in that moment, and that makes him worthy of lifting Mjolnir. I thought that was what it was going to be, and then we got the spear as a third combat option. Dropmir. And I thought we were going to get Mjolnir as a fourth one just for that final Odin battle, and that was ultimately the way that Kratos was going to be able to take him. That's what I assumed was going to happen.
That was where you were you thought it was going. I get you.
And I was like, oh, that'd be so badass to suddenly have access to Mjolnir, and like, now you can use that in the post game. That would be so bad. I thought that's what was going to happen, but no, it was just I guess something that doesn't happen in the story.
I just want to say how happy I am that it wasn't the tier spoiled. I was like, man, did he have that spoiled for him? Because I can't say anything. I can't even ask you because I don't want to lead you in a bad direction and inadvertently spoil it, because it really is like a legitimately, like, I don't know that it's the best all time, but I feel like now it has to at least push onto that list of like greatest like video game twists.
It was a good twist. I don't know if it pushes onto the list of greatest, but it was.
Well,
it was a very good twist.
What list? I mean, where does it clock in? I feel like it's probably near the bottom of the top 10.
I mean, oh man, I would disagree with that. I mean, I think that one of the better twists was the BioShock ending, the first BioShock ending.
Oh, sure. Would you kindly follow our social handles?
Yeah, exactly. That famous line from the video game. Would you kindly follow our social handles?
Obviously, we're in very heavy spoiler territory here. Just assume if there's a game that you don't want spoiled at this point.
No. We should name. Because I don't want to be like, oh yeah, if you haven't played any game ever, turn off this podcast.
Don't listen anymore. Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
You're going to end up spoiling something for me that I haven't played at this point.
That's true. Well, how about this? Knights of the Old Republic.
I actually haven't beaten that game, but I know the spoiler.
Okay, fine. So you know about Darth Revan.
Yes.
I'm not even going to say what it is, but realistically, that to me is probably the best video game spoiler ever.
A lot of people would agree with you.
Twist. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I'm glad that wasn't spoiled for you. I'm so happy. What was your favorite boss battle?
Oh man, I mean, the easy answer is the first Thor fight.
Okay,
just because it's just like, all right, we're gonna do the Baldur thing again.
Yeah.
But like, it was awesome. There's that amazing moment, one of the best moments of the year, where you die in the Thor fight, and it goes to the loading screen. And then he resurrects you with Mjolnir, which is just an incredible moment.
It's like, that's the type of thing that only works in a video game.
Yes, 100%.
Playing with the conventions of it.
Because like if it just went black, I'd be like, what happened? But because it actually started loading the loading screen, and then it brings you back, it's like, oh my god, he even played with like your expectations as like a player, that if you die, it goes to a loading screen, which is so smart. That. And those are the things that are like the best video game twists to me, are things that like actually play with the convention, like the Would You Kindly on BioShock.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great call. I can understand why you'd put Thor. For me, because I hadn't really thought about this until I posed the question, but I would say I would put Heimdall in there because it was a real tough challenge, and it was really hard to kind of figure it out, and it's still hard to execute. And then you have to actually execute. I liked it from a challenge standpoint. Yeah,
I really liked that one as well. And it was one of those things of like...
And also, you really want to beat the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
Because he sucks. I mean, he sucks in a way you want him to suck, but like also he just sucks. He's an asshole.
By the way, that guy. Scott Porter is the voice actor on that. He also is an actor in a lot of other things.
My wife loves Scott Porter.
He knocked it out of the park in that performance. Yeah. Like, he's a great voice actor and a great actor overall.
She liked him in Altar Boys, which is a Broadway show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a really versatile actor, and this entire cast was incredible. There was one moment where the Freya voice acting, I texted this to you. It's when you're flying around in Vanaheim.
Oh, and the bird, yeah.
Freya is in her like bird form. There's like some moments. Who is the other? It's not Sindri. it, or is it just Mimir that she's arguing with somebody?
Probably Mimir.
And it just feels like the voice acting is on a different quality level. Like something
Maybe
about
there was an issue.
But it wasn't
hey,
like...
you know what? For all we know, that's what was done during COVID times, and they just never got the chance to redo it or something. I don't know.
But it wasn't like audio quality. It was acting quality, I'm talking.
Oh, interesting. I don't know.
It just sounded more robotic. And like the rest of the voice acting provided by the Freya voice actress was incredible. I don't know if like they were trying to portray like she was in like a different kind of state. Like the way she was delivering her lines just felt different when she was in her bird form. And I don't know if maybe it was just me or something, but like she just... I don't know. If something felt different. But other than that, the voice acting in God of War Ragnarok is among the best I've ever heard in my life. Like,
I'll shout out, by the way, the voice actress Danielle Basutti.
Who was that?
That was Freya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were talking about. I just want to give the name.
She did a terrific job in the rest of the game. Just something felt a little off in that sequence, but then it was back to amazing again. Like, I don't know what it was. Something just hit me wrong there, but. I do want to shout out the voice actors behind Atreus and Kratos. Christopher Judge, and I forget the actor behind Atreus.
Sonny, what is his name? Excuse me. It is
Sonny Soljic.
Solich, I believe.
Solich, okay. Both of them, I mean, among the best performances I've ever heard in a video game. I
really
think the voice acting in God of War Ragnarok, I think, is up there with like Red Dead Redemption 2 in terms of like just some of the best performances we've ever heard in a video game.
There's very few games, like I've kind of come to this realization. There really are just very few games that I think would actually work as cinematic experiences and like feel like a cinematic experience, and not just because they're like video games that happen to have like more story than another video game. Like this is actually like these two games, I would say in general, and also Red Dead Redemption, particularly 2. They're different. Maybe The Last of Us as well. I don't play those, so I don't know. But like these are the ones that stick out for me the most as games that don't just feel like, oh, it's good for a game. It's like, no, it's good.
Correct. You know what? I really enjoyed this. Is again very end of the game. Afterwards, I was like, I don't want to do any side quests right now. I just want to like enjoy the fact that I got to the end of this game.
Sure.
One thing I did want to do was attend Brock's funeral.
Yes.
And I went and did that. And it seems like that they knew that players should do that. And that's why they hid the actual final credits behind that mission. And I like that they did that. One thing that took me completely out of it, there is a character who is playing an instrument during the funeral scene.
Okay.
And he's in the background. It's a dwarf. And the dwarf bears a striking resemblance to Bear McCreary, the composer of God of War Ragnarok.
Yes, because it is.
And he's playing the instrument that Bear McCreary was playing at the Game Awards. And I'm looking at him like, did they just put like a dwarf that looks like Bear McCreary in this? And it turns out Bear McCreary actually voices the character as well.
Yeah.
And did motion capture for him and everything. I'm just like, it's like if they just it's almost as distracting as if they put like, all right, here, we're going to put a dwarf in here that looks like Vin Diesel in the background. Like it would have been that distracting.
I'm going to say it's to a lesser degree. And the reason being because I just don't know how many people recognize Bear McCreary, because I didn't. I feel like you're in a little bit tighter space there. There's going to be people like you who will feel that way, but I'll bet you the vast majority won't even notice.
And by the way, Bear McCreary is one of the most talented composers I can even think of at this point in all entertainment media.
Amazing. He did an amazing job with these games.
This and one of your other favorites of the year, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, are the two best soundtracks of the year by my book, bar none. Like,
yeah, I mean, in my experience,
and for completely different reasens. Like this one hit all the emotional tones, it hit all the homages to the God of War franchise's past, and it just delivered on every front. Whereas TMNT Shredder's Revenge, it hit the nostalgic part of it, but also like just T. Lopes did a phenomenal job just bringing forward the spirit of those original TMNT arcade brawlers, but also adding a whole bunch of modern twists to it. Like he brought in members of the Wu-Tang Clan, for God's sakes.
They're nothing to fuck with.
They aren't. But yeah, Bear McCreary knocked it out of the park in this soundtrack. I just wish that like I wasn't just fixated on this dwarf in the background going like, is that a Bear McCreary character? Like, is that supposed to be Bear McCreary?
Like I said, that feels more like a you thing than anything. I understand. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I bet you most people aren't going to feel that way.
Probably not, but like it was also it was a thing that took me out of like this very emotional moment.
I get it.
But overall, God of War Ragnarok is my favorite game of the year. One of my favorite games on the PlayStation 5 in general. And I mean,
classic.
If you're still listening to this, you probably have already played it. But if you happen to be around and like you're like, oh, I listened to the spoilers of this game, I still recommend you playing it. The combat is so great. The additions to the combat are amazing. And also, Deborah Ann Woll, limited role in this game. You may know her from Daredevil or True Blood. She delivers a fantastic performance as well as what's his wife's name? Faye. Fantastic job.
Faye. Yeah.
But anything else we need to say about God of War Ragnarok? Because this is the longest episode we've ever done, I think, and I also need to get out of here.
Yeah, we do kind of have to wrap it up. The only thing I would add is again, I love this game, and I really cannot wait to play the new game plus that was announced for coming in the spring.
Yes,
and I've been waiting to play through it because I want to play through it again. But I've been waiting to play through it until New Game Plus because I want to have a reason to like accomplish something new in there. And I figure New Game Plus will be the way. And when I do play through, I want to look for every single interaction that the characters have with Tyr in particular, because I already know of some things along the way that he reacts to. And you're just like, you don't think about it at the time. But when you look back, you're like, well, why was he going so berserk that there was some sort of other thing behind the what's it called, the word I'm looking for, the prophecies, right?
Yeah
that there was that whole other thing. It was like he was just taken so far aback from it and almost like angry and frustrated, and it was like, well, why would he feel that way? He should probably know about this.
I imagine replaying it with the knowledge of Tyr's true identity, it's almost like watching Fight Club a second time.
It feels like that too. But yeah, I love it. I can't wait for that game. I'm glad you got to play it.
Also, one boss fight I do want to shout out is the double Valkyrie fight.
Yeah,
that was really good. And like, I was like, oh my God, 2 Valkyries at the same time. Like, how am I ever going to overcome this? And, you know, it wasn't as tough as like the Valkyrie fights in God of War 2018, but it was still a tough battle.
The Berserkers, as the side stuff, I don't know if you've done any of those, but they get pretty hard. There's a couple of them in particular that I think one of them you fight multiple at a time. I think it might be as many as 3. And that was possibly the hardest God of War Ragnarok fight that I had.
Okay. Not Sigrun.
I played Sigrun on the hardest difficulty. I didn't do that here. So I played middle difficulty here. I don't know what I'll do on my next playthrough. I'll probably still maybe I'll knock the difficulty down and just collect gear if I need to, and then I'll play another one where I'll because I kind of want a leisurely game playthrough too.
For sure.
But then and at some point I'm going to try and give myself like a hyper challenge.
Yeah, I just did Give Me Balance. Did the
that's what default, I did as well,
and it was fun. It was a very fun time, very balanced, and I had a blast with it. And one of these days I would like to replay both of those games.
I hope you do.
Semi back to back, but yeah, overall, my game of the year. I loved it, and I can't wait to see what's next for the franchise.
Absolutely. But you know what? We gotta hit the road. This is a long one. That's our show. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever it is you're listening. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow those social handles at Brian Pichet and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram in some of our cases.
And of course, you can always reach us with questions, feedback, or topics you'd like to hear about at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We'll talk to you next week.